Today, I have these gentlemen here with me because we're going to be talking about how customers' greater access to information and digital platforms is affecting utilities. So with me, I have Eric, Jason, and Jay, and I'm going to go ahead and let you gentlemen introduce yourselves and tell us, why you're here to have this conversation.
Sure. Well, I'm Eric Dresselhuys, and I'm with SEW, the name up on the top that you didn't recognize when you came in. And we work on helping utilities with their digital transformation around customer and employee engagement.
My name is Jason Berns. I work for Constellation, which is Exelon's competitive arm for energy services. I focus specifically on the consumer and the small business space. I've got responsibility for marketing, digital analytics, and innovation. And what we've seen is, a pretty rapid convergence of that over the last, call it 2 to 3 years. So I think it'll be interesting to be able to talk about that.
And I'm Jayesh Shah with Direct Energy. We have over 2 million customers. I oversee marketing for all of our business lines, both for all three: energy, home services, and home protection.
Great, thank you. So Jay, I'm actually going to come back to you and kick it off. So what are some of the big digital trends you're seeing with your customers?
Sure, and I think it's a great question, very timely. Customers expect a lot more in terms of what they are receiving to make their lives easier. And that, in many cases, results in what tools, insights, and actions are you providing that make their lives easier and for them to engage with in a different way. More specifically, there's also technological advances in other industries that are putting pressure on our customers in expecting more of their utility and their energy providers. And to a customer, it's all about simplicity, and that can come in the form in many ways. They're not looking at utilities in its isolation. They want to know exactly how can you make my life easier and what information can you give me.
Jason, what about you? What are you guys seeing in terms of big digital trends?
So we're in a similar place as we look at what customers are trying to do from a digital standpoint as they interact with us. It really is still focused around a lot of the basics. It's things like, I need to know when my bill is due, how much is it, I want to be able to pay it, if I have an opportunity to change a plan, I want to be able to do that. It's things that they would traditionally do through the call centers. And what we just have seen is kind of year over year, we continue to see a step change in, our call center volumes actually coming down, our digital volumes on processing those transactions on the increase. And then I think for us, then the question is how do we kind of leverage that to turn that into a broader set of engagement outside of just, kind of pure basic vanilla account management.
And Eric, what are you guys seeing in terms of, big overall trends that are important?
Well, I think that these guys hit on it. People are interested in doing some really basic things. We all expect to be able to just reach out, grab our device, see consumption, push a button. My running joke is if I have to use my second hand, it's too hard. I have to be able to do it all with my thumb in one hand. But I think the other thing, and the previous speaker hit on it, is there's a convergence. So it's a little hard to think about just energy without thinking about all of the digital assistants that are coming into play, Alexa and Google and others. And what is that device? Is it a smart home device? Well, yeah, sure, in part, but it's also just another digital communications channel. So when people want to engage differently, they don't want to talk to the call center, they want their information in another way. That might be the channel of preference for some people. We were at a conference and a utility walked in and said, my customers actually want me to send them a private tweet when my bill is due, because that's the tool that they look at most often. And if you get out of the US, it's all about WhatsApp. Mm-hmm. WhatsApp is the only communications channel for a big part of the world. So those digital evolutions that are happening outside of the utility space are creeping in pretty hard.
And so, Jason, now that Eric's getting into that space, what exactly is working in terms of engagement? I know that a lot of utilities and retail energy providers are starting to leverage social media, redoing their website. What is really, really working?
Yeah, and I think the consumer is actually driving a big part of this based on how they're interacting regular, not just with us, but with other providers of other services that they're interacting with. We've definitely seen a big move towards social for kind of complaint reporting and resolution. So we're seeing that as an expanding channel that's there. But Eric talked about, Jay mentioned it as well, that one of the key things for us is around simplicity, and it's how do we make those kind of very common things that the customer is trying to accomplish very simple. I mean, I think, Eric's point of like, this should be, the goal should be, one thumb on a phone completes a transaction. And so most of the time when we're getting kind of feedback from consumers, it really is around that ease of, you have a set of tools, but they're not intuitive to me relative to other things that I'm using. Things like managing my wallet to pay my bill seems, very archaic relative to how I do that elsewhere. The fact that I have to double log in to do this versus, in Amazon, I can put my thumbprint on and I can spend $1,000, right? I mean, those are the things that for us, that as we're looking at, how do we actually start to bridge the gap between other experiences that they're having and then what we are delivering within the energy industry.
Yeah, so I see both of you shaking your heads. Jay, I'll toss it over to you, and then Eric, I'd like to get your thoughts on that as well.
It's absolutely that. I think, a lot of times we think about innovation, what we're going to do digital, in the way of what are we going to give customers and then have them take a series of actions that's not their preference. Customers want to know what's going to happen and what you're going to do about it in a way that's, tell me when there's a problem. Tell me how I can avoid it. So, for example, one of the things that's working really well for us is we're using utility data to get customer insight to avoid a $10,000 repair on an HVAC unit. You're using energy data to help a customer save a material amount of money, but it's not requiring a customer action. You're just monitoring customers, giving you access to that information, and you're talking to them when it's most relevant. It's that type of information and ease of use with the understanding of the utility to the customer in ease that really can amplify any digital innovation, strategy, and engagement that you can implement.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on another kind of underlying theme, which is we're moving, and it's come up in a couple of other conversations, the panel earlier this morning, we're moving away from being reactive. Somebody has a complaint, so they reach out and they call or they want an action, and turning that whole paradigm around to being proactive, making a recommendation and understanding what the customer is going to want. And a big commercial customer might love the $10,000 savings on HVAC equipment, but a small bodega on a street corner has a different set of needs. So the segmentation that's coming along with it is really different too, because what matters to me as a customer is what matters to me. I only have 3 concerns: what's in it for me, what's in it for me, and what's in it for me. So I need the utility or any service provider to work with me on that basis.
So I think the next question is, how much urgency do customers actually put on utilities and retail energy providers to make investments in technology and create broader digital engagement strategies? Jay, how much urgency and how much pressure really is coming from that customer?
A tremendous amount of pressure. And it's not coming because a customer is saying, I want my energy provider to do X. It's that it's happening in every other industry. And that simplicity is converging. And it was alluded to earlier. Amazon, Echo, Alexa, all of it's converging into a space where the customer experience is going to be seamless between utility to your home, to your internet, to your phone. And in that way, there's a tremendous amount of pressure being placed on us to keep up. Otherwise, we are going to look as though we're asking them to use 2 hands and even more when everything else is being much more simply implemented in there, around them, everywhere.
I would say we probably, as competitive retailers, feel that pressure more acutely, maybe than what some of the other folks in the room feel, in that, if we don't deliver an experience that's on par with what either the customer expects, or if we provide an experience that just flat out doesn't work, right, the customers leave, right? And so, right, we have an enormous churn problem on the competitive side of the business, and it's these trigger type events that cause customer churn. It's not that they're thinking about, I'm going to wake up today and switch energy providers, but what happens is they go, for example, to pay their bill, and they go to log on to the site, and the site, they can't get logged in, and they're like, I just had this problem last month, it's just not worth it anymore. And so I think we feel that pressure in a different way, but I think that it's coming for everybody in this room.
Yep.
And so you have a unique perspective because you're a technology provider, so when you're working with utilities and retail energy providers, are they coming to you and say, we need to do this right now because our customers?
Well, and I think it does apply. I just echo what you said. I think if it doesn't matter if you're a traditional vertically integrated IOU or a municipal or in a competitive market, everybody is feeling that pressure. And if I were the CEO of a traditional vertically integrated utility, I would want to wake up with the same attitude that these guys have and say, if I don't improve service, then there's not going to be any groundswell to protect my position. I've got to deliver the goods. I think what we're finding is that I don't think we talked to any utility who's doing nothing in this category. The problem is once you get started, the pace at which the technology is evolving moves just a lot faster than people are traditionally thinking about it. So if you're used to in a typical utility procurement process, doing a 6 to 12 month evaluation within a 12 to 18 month test, and then you'll go to procurement, and then you'll implement something, and it's 3 years later. The things that you started testing probably don't exist and are obsolete by the time you implement it. So it's a really different pace of technology than I think a lot of utilities have historically been working at.
So how do you start to overcome that challenge?
I think it'll just make it easier. I think that what we try to do, and I think this would probably apply to a lot of technology vendors and folks here in the market, out in the room, is we have to be better. We have to deliver better products that are easier to implement, and be a part of the solution and how you make it go faster. If we just come to the utilities and say, listen, you knuckleheads, you guys better move faster, it's not going to work.
So Jason, how is your team trying to move through that?
Yeah, I would say that I spend a lot of time actually trying to change the conversation of how the senior executive team thinks about digital, and they tend to still come from looking at digital investments the way that they traditionally looked at IT investments, right? That digital is a platform. And the way that we think about it is that digital is just an experience, right? It's a medium of which people are actually trying to accomplish things within. And there is platform that sits underneath it. But we used to have the team organized around managing platforms, for example, right? Somebody owns this software piece. And what we're moving towards is, we're actually organizing things around account management experience, because it can be a whole series of software that's sitting there that's actually that interaction point. But I think changing that conversation and getting out of this, it looks like an IT procurement cycle that's a box and it's got an upgrade cycle that's 3 years, and looks more that says, this is an experience I want to deliver. We know that things are moving quickly, and how do we actually, for us, the biggest question is, how do I move data from third party to in and out of kind of our own billing systems, right? And the design around that is extremely important to whether you're successful in being kind of flexible and innovative through time.
Sure, yeah, just jumping in. It's similar in that we have to think about customers first. That's the first thing. And secondly, what is that digital experience that's not about the technical solution or the platform that is going to drive better customer experience and engagement? For example, the things that we're doing is there information out there that you can just simplify the customer enrollment? More and more customers are shopping for electricity plans in Texas on their phones. And we're still having we're redesigning a website experience that's on a laptop on a phone. That's not the right way to do it. What are data elements that are out there? Think about how it just shows a level of sophistication when you're on a website, you're typing your address, you type 3 or 4 digits, and it's auto-populating. It's small stuff that can go a long way, but coupled with much more complex data that's already available around, you can pull historical usage when a customer's enrolling, and to say, we know you were interested in this plan. it actually looks like, based on the 12 months of history, this is the right plan for you. It looks like you're working parent at home. It looks like you may have an overnight shift. This is probably a more appropriate plan. And then separately, there's other elements that you can give them. For example, this summer in Texas is going to be a tough one. We've all read about capacity, reserve margins, wholesale power movements. What are we going to do for customers in the digital experience to help them navigate through that? What information are we going to provide? And a lot of that is, it's not deep-rooted innovation in technology. It's about data that's there. It's about technology that's available. It's just that customers haven't seen it pieced together in a seamless way. And that's what we got to do a better job of. But it starts with putting ourselves in the customer's shoes. I know most people in this room don't do it, but there's still many customers that are referred to as ratepayers. That's a perfect example of just a bit of a reframe and really talking about their customers. It's exactly what we do, and we need to bring that perspective to our industry and through a digital lens.
So before we get into that data piece, I do want to ask you, Jason, are utilities and retail energy providers, are they really aligned with customers' expectations? Or do you guys feel like you are? How are you trying to understand what your customers want? Jay?
You want to jump into that one first?
I would say we're a lot more aligned than where we were 5 years ago. Are we fully there yet? I think we're still navigating through it. Part of the challenge is the traditional approach that we've had from the utility side when we think about engaging customers and digital engagement is create a portal and expose some data, right? And the customer will figure it out. And we've proven over decades and decades that customers don't figure that out, right? And so I think where we've started to make a shift is we start talking about, it's not just about the number of customers or the number of transactions, but how do we actually establish a sense of relevancy that doesn't exist today, right? And so relevancy for us has been a really important kind of rallying concept within the competitive business. And we think about that as it's a combination of kind of meaningfulness of an interaction and the frequency of that interaction. And within the business, we've tended to have kind of the worst of both of those. Of we don't have a very meaningful interaction. It only happens once a month when the bill gets delivered, right? And so that's where we start to think about kind of moving in that direction. Are we there yet? We're not there yet, right? And part of it is we function within an industry where it's not a terribly accessible industry to an end consumer, right? To an average household consumer, right? We're in a unit of measurement that people don't understand, right? We use a set of terminology in the industry that I go talk to my parents about, and they're like, that sounds really cool, right? Let's go back to, right, let's test the wine, right? I mean, it's like and so I think that we've got to focus on more on how do we actually make kind of insights accessible to customers, and we haven't done a great job of that yet.
So Jay, before you answer that, Jason, you said one thing, a meaningful interaction. What is a meaningful interaction? How do you gauge if an interaction is even meaningful in the first place?
I mean, for me, it's something that's actually memorable to the customer, right? Something that they would potentially talk about to someone else, right? It's like, oh, I had this interaction, and some of it can be because it's unexpected, but more it's just because it was helpful. And so, Jay talked a little bit about this of it's not about, exposing data or providing information for the sake of providing information. It's actually getting at, what is relevant to this customer at this point in time. And it's a more of a, we think about it as we drive relevancy by providing a more personalized, some type of insight that feels personalized to the customer that allows them to either understand something that they didn't, to avoid a surprise, or actually take an action to make a change in whatever the trajectory is that they're on. And so that's how we start to think about that.
Okay. Jay, so what are you seeing in terms of being able to align with customers' expectations?
I think we do a great job of it, but in the instances that we've earned it, in many cases, we have not, there is no alignment. A customer has not seen anything beyond a bill, and I'd heard a statistic, many customers think about you 5 minutes a year when they're most pissed off and surprised by a bill that you've sent them. And there are many customers in that's our relationship, and that's our experience, and that's what they've come to expect. But in the cases where, in many cases, all of us have highlighted, around when you've given them a simplified experience, when you've given them a meaningful experience, when you've given them something that, wow, you saved me money or gave me an insight that I wasn't expecting, then the alignment is there because they have seen what value you can drive through the energy use, through the data that you're providing, and through the digital experience that you're giving them to it's about me. Tell me how you're going to help. What are you going to do for me, my family, my home? And in that way, once you've done that, and we're doing it better than ever, we have a long way to go, but we're there. And whenever that happens, that loyalty through customer, loyalty through tenure, and through just the way that they purchase other goods and services because you've earned their trust is tremendous. And so that alignment's being built, but it just highlights the need for don't wait for the customer to show them the value. You got to develop the tools to get in front and show them the value that you can drive and deliver, and it will pay off 10x.
So Eric, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and then I'd also like to hear how you think utilities and retail energy providers can use some of the data that already exists to improve products and services that are offered to customers.
Yeah, well, I think the timeliness of the communication, so I agree with what the guy said. I live in California, and every month I get a letter from my utility telling me I suck. It does. It says I use too much energy, and I use more than my neighbors, and I suck. And it comes on paper in the mail. So my insulting, environmentally unfriendly behavior is doubly insulting because we had to cut down a tree, or maybe it was recycled, to do that. It's entirely inactionable, and it happens a month and a half after the event that caused the activity. That's like every single thing that's wrong with customer engagement, all neatly printed on a color piece of paper. So I think there's a ton of information that's available to people today. Certainly as you get into a world where there's AMI data broadly, we can see very granularly what's going on. And one immediate way that we've seen it be very effective is with demand response programs and giving people rate options where they can opt in. There's no technology gap in doing that today. We can offer people dynamic price programs or different rate structures, and we can do that all with information and technology that's available today. We can make suggestions and recommendations about energy efficiency in appliances and do that at the moment when someone's paying the bill. And although it doesn't affect the retail folks as much, the single, maybe no-brainer way to engage customers is to meet their number one expectation, which is just reliability. So when the power goes out, getting a proactive communications that the power's out, being able to see on a map where the power outage has happened, getting some notification of when the power is likely to be restored, and having that be a two-way channel so that if I see a power outage but I didn't get my alert, can I just push one quick button and send the notification in? I don't want to call the call center and report my outage, right? I think those were all just kind of super no-brainer type categories, and then here's my bold proposal for the regulated utilities or the grid operators in the room that I haven't gotten anybody to bite on yet. So I want to be really, really clear that I'm betting O for the ball game on this. I don't know why when you get your energy bill, somebody doesn't publish the customer-specific reliability number on the bill. That information is available. It's not a system-wide SAFE, MAFE kind of a metrics. If you have a smart meter, that smart meter is logging momentary outages and duration outages, and I could put on the bill that I have a 99.98% reliability metric. It's pretty good, right? And I think the fear would be, the mentality historically has been the utility person thinks only about the 0.2% or whatever number I said, failure. But most people get a really reliable, very predictable service at a very reasonable price from their utility, and I don't know why utilities don't brag about it.
So Jason, how are you guys at Constellation using the data that already exists to improve some of the services you provide?
Yeah, so this for us is really in what I would call an evolutionary state at this point. So, I think what we've done a good job with generally as an industry is, right, as we put smart meters in, we've seen a fair amount of kind of innovation and efficiency improvement on kind of the grid side of things, kind of on the, kind of that other side of the meter. It's when you look at the consumer side of it where we are probably not as advanced in terms of how have we delivered value from the data that's there. But as we start looking, I mean, we've been evaluating, kind of what can you do with, disaggregated usage that starts to be able to look at, so what is an appliance doing, right? And starting to understand, right, if you can understand what's happening with the runtime of an appliance, right, you can get, right, that starts to give you a lot of information about how things are running, and it gets to Jay's point of how do you start to be proactive on things, right? And, we focus very heavily for us on kind of the big users of energy when we're thinking about how are we using data and trying to apply that to, kind of solve customer problems in advance. And that, somewhere between a half and 2/3 of average American, kind of household usage is between, heating, cooling, and water heating, right? And so it's focusing on those big systems is the area that we've been looking at. How can we understand the data around those systems, what's running with those systems, and the controls of those systems, so we can start to integrate that better. And so when you start to talk to a customer about what is it that we can provide, either as a service to you, as a way to understand, what are different levers that you can pull to actually change the way of what your bill amount is, right? That we're starting to talk very specifically about their household, the controls that they have in household, and what different things are likely to mean. And then when is it actually time to think about, maybe you don't have the right equipment in your household to drive energy efficiency or a bill in the way that you're looking for.
At Direct, we're doing very similar things. What are we doing?
Sorry.
We're all looking at each other like, who did that? So, no, it's similar. And what all data do we have to drive behavior? So the ways that we're implementing are looking at it from the 5 stages of how we define a customer experience to be. So when they're shopping, how are you simplifying? It goes back to the mobile phone example. How many touches can you minimize to get a customer that's interested in you to close in transaction? How can you give them the data to recommend the right plan to sign up for? Then after that, when they're online, are you giving them the right tools as they're onboarding to say, here's what we think your customer behavior is. What's your payment frequency? So one of the digital innovations that we implemented was pay your bill. Pick the time that you want to pay the bill so that you're not surprised it works with your schedule. Separately, when it gets into multi-premise, if you have a vacation home or if you have a rental home or a property, if you have multi-premise, how would you like the settings to be set up? How do you want to be notified for your primary residence versus not? And what's that smart meter alert threshold that you want to receive? Separately, we have OAM, where they actually have a whole series of things that customers can customize around what information they want to see. What business lines are you interested in? Are you interested in prevention, maintenance, service? So we're building those tools and giving them recommendations with real data. We're sending weekly usage emails that show disaggregated usage. They're passive. They can opt in or opt out, but we always show them what the value of it is. And within those communications, we're also highlighting things that are going to be changing going forward. So, part of it is, we project what their bill is going to be. So there should always be an element of minimizing surprise to the extent possible. We use smart meter data, weather normalized data. We have a meteorologist that we're all compiling to say, here's what your bill is going to be for the end of the month. And if there's anything outside of that and that threshold's crossed, we tell you 2 weeks before you see it so that you can take action with a recommended list of things that you can actually do using, again, a modeling that we've done around predictive usage. Those are the things that customers value. Those are real things that we are using our data and insights to drive behavioral change. And then separately are the things that customers are coming to expect from all matters of providers. And those are just utility and home service examples of how we're implementing them.
So I'm going to ask these gentlemen one more question before we move into our audience Q&A. So make sure to use Slido to submit your questions for these gentlemen. And so, Eric, Jay and Jason started to get into what I wanted to ask you next, which is how can customer engagement tie into a bigger enterprise-wide digital roadmap moving forward?
Listen, I think there's a lot of efforts, and we've heard over the last couple of days, digitization happening throughout the enterprise. So I would look at this as understanding these customer journeys and the customer expectations, not as an output of all of those other digital journeys, which unfortunately I think sometimes happens. Utilities are working on all this stuff and then they go, holy crap, I got to go present this to the customer. I'd turn that model around and use the customer engagement and the customer experience as a thing to drive some of the digital activities back into the enterprise and say, what is the customer telling us they want in that interaction, in that journey? And if we can't do something today, then let's use that as a guidepost to go drive that back into the enterprise.
And so, Jason, how does it tie in for you guys into your broader digital roadmap?
Yeah, so I think there's one important distinction that we make within the business today when we think about digital strategy and roadmap, though, is we separate kind of customer from what I'd call it sales enablement or internal, right? And so we tend to sometimes we get in these conversations and it gets confused of like, well, digital strategy is all things electronic and the scope of it is from, what the customer sees all the way to, kind of what we use to process the billing, right? And it's like, no, at some point you have to draw some distinction there that says, if you want to focus on driving customer engagement, you've got to have a set of dedicated resources that's driving digital strategy that is specific to the customer. And then, from our standpoint, I referenced this earlier, but what we look at internally, right, from a systems perspective, what does that mean from a roadmap perspective? What we're trying to drive there is this accessibility of data. I can go to the operations folks and say, I don't actually care what billing system you're using. I need 50 pieces of data exposed out of it. And that's the data elements that I can use. And then I can layer whatever front-end interface or tool on top of that to pull the data. And that actually helps simplify a lot. I'm not recoding, every application into the guts of something, and then every time something changes, I've got to move it. And so as we think about, right, just design from how data is moved, that for us is a big part of the digital strategy.
I think the question around digital roadmap for us, the way we define it, is near term, midterm, long term. Near term, it's all about optimization around how are you going to get customers, simplify the experience, how are you going to get them to be a customer of direct energy in the number of ways as simply as possible. In the midterm, it's really about keeping pace with the trends that are happening in industry. How are we going to integrate with Alexa? What are we going to do with smart refrigerators, smart washers, and how does that tie in to our data set, and how are we going to evolve customer propositions as a result? And then there's the long term, which is electric vehicles, the things that are going to come online. How are we going to be positioned to gather and protect customer data and share customer data in a relevant way? And in that, I can't underemphasize who is going to own the data in that world. It's not just energy smart meter data, but there's kilowatt hour data being passed back and forth. And we've all seen some real challenges around data privacy recently in the headlines. And it's going to be a matter of time that we're going to be faced with similar challenges in the next 3 to 5 year window, which is the long term, how we define it. And we got to be thinking forward to what information we're going to collect, what information are we going to share, and what information are we going to opt in or opt out from customer lens in sharing. So that's the way that I think about it. So it's about ease of use, keeping pace with technology trends, and then very much about as more information is gathered around energy, how are we going to distribute and protect it?
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're ready to start our audience Q&A. Do we have any questions via Slido that have come in? Erin Otan back there?
We do, Erin Hardick. So the first one is, what do you think the role of regulated utilities, what is the role that you think regulated utilities should play in offering deregulated products to their customers?
Jay?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. To me, it's about what came up earlier in the conversation about reliability. There is an element of safety, security, reliability that regulated utilities provide. And in that, I'll give you an example where CenterPoint is providing great information when customers have outages. They're saying, here's the problem, here's when it's going to be resolved, here's what it is. And competitive providers can take that information and piggyback on it. And driving more information to customers that's relevant, that's out there, in partnering with regulated utilities. But then there's also a bit of information sharing. So we can help fleet management, capacity management around optimization for how the grid operates that we are collecting from our customers, both in what we have currently as to where customers are wanting to go. So customers are ready to opt into demand response programs. We just haven't made it easy for them. If we can get more of them to opt in from a competitive standpoint, we can then partner with regulated utilities to help more efficient grid management, which will ultimately save them cost and help the grid be more reliable. And I can't underemphasize what we're about to have this summer in Texas. This is a great example of the closer we are in tying those two together will ultimately serve our customers better. And when we talk about our two separate entities, I would just highlight that the customer, there's only one. They don't see it between regulated and deregulated. They're just expecting service, and we got to always make sure that that's top of mind. And I think that only comes through closer linking of sharing that type of information.
I think it's inevitable that the regulated utilities are going to have to venture into deregulated product sets. When you think about things like rooftop solar, battery storage, the reality is those things are coming to the marketplace. The question is when and how quickly. But as those things are coming online, they are going to push the envelope on, well, how do utilities think of themselves as, how are they playing a relevant role, right? First and foremost from grid reliability, but then second first in terms of this is now how customers are managing energy right within their homes. And so I think that there is absolutely going to be a role, right? If you look across the nation, right, a big chunk of the nation does not have deregulation in place. And so, right, if we're going to actually move where we need to get to, the reality is regulated utilities are going to have to start taking steps in ways that look different and step outside the norm of, right, reliable, efficient, kind of centrally generated electricity service.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the nature of the question's a little quirky as I was replaying it in my head. A regulated utility, if they do something, it isn't a deregulated activity, right? It's by definition a regulated activity, right? So most regulated utilities have a deregulated holding company structure. So there's an Edison International that's different than SoCal Edison. And that entity can go off and do whatever anybody else in the deregulated markets can go off and do, and they should do that on a at-risk basis with shareholder money and go. I think the trickier question is, and you hit on it in what you just said, there are new energy things that I think regulated utilities should and will do because they will come back to that core mission around reliability or market enablement.
All right, Erin, hit us with the next question.
All right, can customer engagement help utilities cut carbon emissions and drive other environmental outcomes, and if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely, in any number of ways, and I think it's come up in a couple of the talks, but the amount of paper loss, the amount of truck rolls that are avoided through having digital customer engagement, the amount of loss reduction that happens. This is kind of talking a lot about energy, but in the water side, and there's a lot of energy-water nexus stuff you can talk about. Digital customer engagement was hugely important during the California droughts, giving people better information, tools, reporting leaks and losses. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, as we see kind of, sensors are exploding within the home, right? You think about smart home and what's happening with smart home systems. The reality is in many cases, right, what those things are doing is actually tracking and understanding, right, those appliances that are using electricity, right? It's, leak detection of water, kind of when your water heaters are, if a water heater is leaking. It's around understanding how efficiently an HVAC system is operating, right? And being able to start to engage at that level with customers proactively, there is absolutely going to be efficiency gain that comes out of that.
I completely echo. It's already happening. I mean, demand response programs, the things that we're doing to make systems more efficient, providing information on how they can become more efficient. It's already happening.
And smart home is making it easier.
Absolutely.
It's making it easier.
Yeah.
All right, we have time for one or two more.
Okay, so this one came up a couple of times. Customers care about the lights being on and the cost going down, but does your research prove that they really care about other analytics or analytics around appliance usage?
So, I mean, I'll take a shot at that first. But so the answer is absolutely yes, right? That I think about a market like Texas, the number of providers here on the competitive side in Texas. I have tons of customers that don't buy the lowest price that's available from me, the lowest price that's available from someone else, right? And they're making trade-offs around what are the things that they're interested in, right? And it's things like, what is the renewable content of what their plans look like? Are there other things that come with plans? For example, we have plans in market that include, kind of electric or air conditioning coverage, right, as part of that plan. People make choices all the time, right, that look at things that, right, you start changing the nature of the game. It's not just, kind of what's the dollar on the bill. It's what are you getting for the dollar on the bill, and how much does that look from, kind of what it is if it's just plain vanilla. And I think what you see is consumers making choices. We see it all the time to actually trade for something else that provides more value than just the cheapest price on the bill.
Yeah, and I would echo the same. It gets back to understanding customers and customer segments. There's ones that absolutely price is the only thing that matters, and there's others that value insights, services, and additional information in which they're willing to pay a premium, and they make that at the point where they're actually comparing the rates side by side and choose the more premium option because they understand the value that comes with it. All customers are different, customer segments are different, and we are doing a good job of positioning the propositions well, but you absolutely see customers not going to the cheapest option in many, many cases.
All right, let's try to get one more question in here before we close it out.
Okay, so what percentage of your customers want to engage and what percentage just want to be left alone?
I'll just piggyback. It's a little bit of an echo of the last answer, but it's customer segments. There are ones, they don't want to hear from you. They don't want to, I'll pay my bill, whatever's my bill. Just let me pay it as simply and easily as possible. And there's ones that want to know when there's a degree fluctuation in the weather and what that impact is going to have. It's almost to the point, and that's where we really need to do a good job of understanding which customers want that information and how we give it to them, but also give them the customization to opt in and opt out to what's necessary and make that simple as well. There's not just a cut and dry answer for that. There's different customer segments, and it goes back to a general theme in this digital enablement. It's a customer one. Everybody has different preferences and needs, and there's ways to cluster and develop roadmaps to deliver that customization, but it all varies by customer.
Yeah.
And also the customer understanding of what do they know that's available, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, where we sometimes have a big challenge is, again, with this idea of customers don't understand the industry very well. They don't understand what we're doing and what we're providing outside of, kind of the dollar on the bill. The customers today don't actually know what's possible. And so some of what we need to be doing is actually exposing the possibility of what else is out there to them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's the old Henry Ford line of, if you ask people what they wanted, they say a faster horse. The numbers that I've seen show about 25% of people never want to hear from you. There's a big chunk in the middle. It's about half that want some engagement, and then there's kind of a 25% really high use. I want feedback all the time. But I think that's an oversimplification relative to what the offerings that are put in front of them. Because if it's more compelling to get involved, then I think people will opt in to the communications. I don't suspect 15, 20 years ago, if you would have asked people, how many people want to spend $5 for a cup of coffee? That there would have been that many people that would have offered that that's what they really want to do. But boy, when they have that option, people do it every day like an addiction.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us. Thank you, Jay, Jason, Eric. Can everybody help me in thanking our panelists for having such a great discussion today?